What's up everybody, welcome back to TaylorMade Creations. If you want to see how to build this awesome table, go ahead and check out this video. So when I do these types of builds, I like to build the legs first, just so when I build the tabletop I have something to set it on. So I took all the 4x4s and 2x4s and cut them down to size and got everything pre-cut, so all I had to do was assemble it. So since the top and bottom of the table frame is going to have two boards crisscrossing each other, I like to notch them out because it gives it a lot better secure fit. And it also helps that I have this table saw sled to notch out these boards quickly and safely. Next, I cut out 3.5 by 3.5 inch squares from the 1x6s I had left over from another project, and these are just for little pedestals to go on the bottom of the legs. I then cut a 45-degree notch on each end of the bottom of the legs just to give it a little more of a decor feel. Now it was time to start assembling the legs for the table. So I put some glue down and put the bottom two pieces that were going to crisscross each other together, and then I was able to cinch in the Spax T30 1/4 by 6 inch lag screws, and I'll put a link to those in the description below. The last step on the bottom of the legs was to attach the 3.5 inch by 3.5 inch pedestals that I cut out of the 1x6s. Now that the bottom of the legs was finished, I could start assembling the top part. So I put the two boards that crisscross each other and cinched it in with 3-inch screws. Now that the top part of the legs was assembled, which will be responsible for holding the diagonal pieces, I could now start putting on the next two layers, which will be holding the tabletop. Next, I drilled a number 6 countersink hole on all the diagonal pieces, and then I followed that up by sanding the legs to 220 grit. The legs were now ready for stain. Now that the legs were finished, I could begin working on the tabletop. So I cut all the 2x6s down to the correct length and then ripped each edge of the 2x6. The purpose of me ripping the edge off is because when these boards come from the factory, they have a little bit of a rounded edge on them, or corner, and that's going to cause salt and all kinds of things to kind of get in the cracks of that. So if you rip it, you get a nice complete corner, and then you can put them together and you get a nice flat table. I then followed that up by laying all the boards out, alternating grain up versus grain down. And the purpose of this is if your whole tabletop is grain up or grain down, then the whole table will begin to bow over time. Now that the tabletop was laid out how I wanted it, I found the center of the table and put in a temporary finish nail in there. And the purpose of this is so I could connect a string and draw a general idea of where the edge of the table was going to be for the circle, just so I could lay out my pocket holes and put them in the correct place. Now that I knew where I was going to drill my pocket holes, I took out my Kreg jig and drilled all of the pocket holes on the bottom of the tabletop. It was now time to start assembling the tabletop, so I put glue on each edge of each board that was going to make up the top. And then I used a trigger clamp to clamp the boards together to make sure there was no gap in between, and then I used a Kreg clamp to make sure each board was flush with each other. Then I cinched the screw and worked my way down to each screw, repeating the same process. Now it was the fun part of the project. I've never cut out a circle before for a table, so I was pretty excited to try out my new Rockler circle jig, and I'll put a link to that in the description below. But anyways, what you do is you put a pin in the center and you attach the circle jig, and then you attach your router, and you can adjust the jig to the radius that you want for the circle. It was very easy to set up and extremely easy to use. I was pleasantly surprised at how easy it was to cut out a perfect circle, and it only took me 2 passes to do so. I didn't want the end grain of each board on the tabletop to show along the edge, so I bought a 16-foot 2x6 and I ripped a 3/8 inch piece off the edge, and this was going to act as a piece that I was going to wrap around the table to give it a nice finished clean look. I followed that up by attaching all the diagonal pieces to the legs and then putting putty in all the holes that were created from screws or nails so I could go ahead and sand it and get it ready for stain. The stain I used on this project I haven't used before. It's called the Minwax Classic Gray, and it seems to be very popular right now, and I love the way it turned out. After I finished staining the top, I finished it off with a polyacrylic finish, and this is just to protect the tabletop from use over time. It was now time for the finishing touches, so I put on the felt pads to prevent scratching on the floor, and then I used some corner brackets to attach the tabletop to the legs. Well, I really hope you guys enjoyed the video. It was a really fun build. First time doing a circle table, and also first time using this kind of gray stain, and I love the way it turned out. So I highly recommend this stain. Gray seems to be in right now, so it turned out really well. The Rockler jig that I used worked very well for cutting this circle out, so I highly recommend that for cutting out circles. And other than that, if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. If you have any questions or comments, just leave me a comment in the comment section below. And also, if you like any of the tools or materials I'm using, I'll put links to those in the description below. Other than that, happy building. See you next time.